What's up everyone, welcome. My name is MT Major and today we're going to talk about some beginner lore of the Elite Dangerous universe. There's a really large and big lore in Elite Dangerous, and I wanted to talk about the beginner aspects of that lore to get you guys kind of introduced to the Elite Dangerous universe. If you're a new player, because I know Elite Dangerous gets new players often, this is something that you really want to look into. A lot of other players should already know this, but I just want to make a couple of videos talking about the lore of Elite Dangerous itself, not about specific things that I've done in the past. Now, I also want to congratulate myself and you and the channel on reaching 1 million views. Thank you guys so much. We're now on 1,005,383 views with 2,606 subscribers, so I'm extremely happy for that. That's a huge amount of views, and yeah, thank you guys so much for making this happen. I mean, it's amazing. So we're going to look at the ancient history of Elite Dangerous. Elite Dangerous is a gigantic universe, and right now in the year 3304, humanity has stretched out across the stars. A lot of places have been colonized, although it's less than 1% of all the stars of Elite Dangerous, and a lot have changed since the days of 2015 when the game was released in the universe, obviously. The way that Elite Dangerous came into existence was by the age of 2030, the resources began to dwindle, and humanity's futures began to look grim because there weren't a lot of oil reserves, and there wasn't a lot of things for people. There wasn't enough food, and everything was just a little shitty. And then there was a gigantic Third World War. This World War would make the other two look like nothing. I mean, basically this was such an extremely heavy nuclear war that it basically almost destroyed everything, and the beautiful Earth was turned into a barren wasteland. Now this war ended in 2050 after a couple of rebellious groups forced governments to cease the fighting. The nations were all devastating, and corporations began to take up all the power because they were the only ones left with actually some leverage after such a gigantic war. In 2080, humanity spread out across the solar system and built orbital cities around Earth in 2100. One of the most important discoveries ever made in about 2200, about that time space, was a hyperspace. This was a way of obviously everyone knows what hyperspace is, but it's it's a way of moving really fast through the universe. Around this time as well, there was life identified on Tau Ceti, which is a solar system with a planet on it, and although they didn't really know what this was, it probably was just some bacterial life and stuff like that. Colonization ships were sent by corporations to that planet and many other planets. There were extremely amounts of colonization ships. Colonization ships are gigantic ships that are made by corporations to send to many different solar systems and planets to basically colonize it. But these systems had a very basic form of hyperdrive, very basic form of impulse drive, and most of them did not make it. There were only a couple stories of it. Now, with all this basic information about how the universe began to start, there was actually something else within the time span of now and then. The humans identified a enemy force called the Thargoids. Now, there isn't much about this, but basically the way the humans destroyed the Thargoids was by infecting them with a virus that basically almost extincted all of them, and they turned into merely of a myth, and they turned into basically something that was but doesn't exist anymore. And lately they've showed up again, meaning that they still are alive, and people don't think this is something crazy. Now, for new people, Thargoids are a given fact, but when I started playing Elite Dangerous, alien species were not existent. They didn't exist. and it's such an interesting thing because right now it's standard, but it wasn't when I started playing, and many other people it wasn't. It was just, you know, they didn't exist. I remember telling one of my friends, how crazy would it be if aliens start showing up? And I mean, they did. So that's something extremely exciting and crazy about Elite Dangerous. So yeah. Now, where do these Targoids come from? Targoids come from Witchbase, which is a basically dimensional rift. The moment you go into hyperspace, you enter this weird like space where everything has like all these weird bright colors. It's like going through a nebula with extremely high speeds. That's called Witchbase. It's a different dimension. You warp by using warp drive in the game, which is something that's not obviously not a real theory. Lumiere drive, the drive of going from planet to planet, is actually a theory that might work. It's basically bending space in front of you and in the back of you, making you move faster than the speed of light, even though you don't really move faster than the speed of light. It's merely the area around you being changed faster than the speed of light. It's a very weird concept. It doesn't matter. Witchbase is when you go into actual warp drive, when you go into actually going from a system to another system. You bend space. You go into a different dimension, and from that dimension you enter into the normal dimension. That's what basically Witchbase is. Witchbase is where the Targoid live. Now, how they live there, no one knows. What they do there, no one knows. The only thing that they do know is that Targoids are able to take you out of Witchbase, which has happened and still happens. So whenever you're going Witchbase, just a friendly reminder that sometimes Targoids just take you out. Although it doesn't really happen, but it can happen. Just saying. Other than that, the Federation was formed almost rightly after humanity started to, get up. It was basically the combination of all the corporations together with the president. The Empire was a very dark child of the Federation, basically. The Empire started as rebelling against the Federation. They captured a couple of planets, and eventually it became extremely large. The Federation at one point, and I have a couple of videos on this, so if you guys are really interested, you should check them out. But basically, the Federation at one point tried to kill all the the Empire people. But in secret, the Empire has been creating a lot of vessels, and they had an extremely large battle where the Federation lost, and thus the big struggle between factions began. So the Alliance, however, is relatively new. It's basically a new type of group of lone wolves and just good, and I mean, it's also corporations, but it's a different kind. It's basically freebooters. They don't want to be under control of anyone but themselves. So the Federation, or the Alliance, is a very open faction, if you will. Now, this is basically the basics of Elite Dangerous, and I hope you guys enjoy this. This is especially for new players, this is a lot of interesting information. I hope you guys enjoy this, and subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff. Subscribe if you want to see all my other stuff, because I do got a lot of lore for you guys in my playlist, so do check that out, and I'll see you guys in the next one.